Hey, I'm curious if you've found it yet. That moment when the world seems to grow in front of you. The unfathomable reality of a scene beyond comprehension, where full lives have been lived, millions of years have passed, and everything laid in wait, not for you, but for eternity. You just happen to have arrived, to have found it, and now all you can do is try to bring it together. Try to do justice to the very essence of immensity. Few tools let you do that, so a wise choice is paramount. If you have a second, I'd love to just discuss that choice.
One of my favorite aspects of the creative process in photography is the exploration of different perspectives. When we take a photograph and when we present a photograph, and I say this all the time in so many different videos, we create the window through which we and other people get to experience a scene. So each perspective we choose is unique and drives that narrative that we're experiencing forward. Furthermore, each focal length drives that narrative forward and creates a new, unique perspective for people to view that scene through. Now, when Pergear reached out with the opportunity to use their 14mm f2.8 in any creative capacity I could think of, I was quite excited because, quite frankly, I've been wanting to buy a 14mm for really a year or two. I've begun shooting wider and wider, and this kind of focal length is just that edge beyond wide angle into ultra wide, and it seemed like a compelling addition to the kit for some time. So I took this as a chance to explore the creative process and how an ultra wide can begin to change that process and what opportunities it opens up. So first of all, thank you to Pergear. I do get to keep this lens, but I do not have to provide any kind of review, and I'm not obligated to say anything at all. What I'm saying is strictly the creative endeavor that I chose to pursue with this lens as a part of it. I'll save the majority of my thoughts until the end of the video about the quality of this lens, but up front, the 30-second synopsis is that this is an excellent offering for the price. It's built well, if not a little heavy. It's not weather sealed, but that rarely holds me back. It's sharp enough, especially in the center, but less so around the edges. And while the flaring is well enough controlled for a wide angle, it can get out of hand in the right environments, or I should say, the wrong ones. All in all, it's an excellent lens for the price. It's not perfect, but it's going to remain in my bag most of the time, especially when I know that scenes I'm going to be entering are going to need that kind of focal range. Now I want to get started by looking at the ultra wide angle and the process of using it. As photographers and photographic storytellers, our main drive is to create scenes that our viewers can explore. It's our goal to bring viewers in and allow them to wander, to consider, to find mystery and allure. And so when we create these scenes, when we capture them, and when we try our best to display narratives, we do it as effectively as we can with the perspectives we choose to use. An ultra-wide gives us some unique opportunities. For one, in photo sets, when we're building a scene, we often complement details with broader settings. So an ultra-wide allows us to bring everything in, create this world that all of our other photos may exist in. The smaller details can be a part of that bigger scene, but by having that bigger scene there, we've established an overarching narrative, even just through a single photo. Now this may be easier said than done, and it's not always necessary, but in photographic series or photographic storytelling, scene building like this is quite important. But another use, and one that might be more applicable to just the common photographer, is a single photo in isolation. And we still have a very similar ability with our ultra-wide to bring people into that scene in a unique way that other lenses can't do. We have to be very careful, but our goal can and should be to create a space for our viewers to come into. And an ultra-wide gives us as much space as possible. Once they're in that space, we can cultivate a sense of interest through, a specific subject or guiding details. We have to use light, composition, weighting, and all these other strategic variables in order to build this scene that is capable of holding interest. But if we do it, there's no better tool than an ultra-wide because it allows people the space to breathe. One lesson that I think is essential, that I would teach anybody that's getting into ultra-wide photography, or really photography in general, but it's especially important when we have all the space that an ultra-wide brings into our frame. The idea is to never lose your subject. Now, your subject doesn't have to necessarily be a person, it doesn't have to be a mountain, it needs to be just an idea or narrative of some kind, and you can't lose sight of that. Once you do, it's more than likely that your frame is now either boring, distracting, or imbalanced. So you have to consider, what is your subject, what is your narrative, what is your focus, and how can you build every other variable around that towards it to make sure that you are actually creating a compelling focus on something. I have to take just a few seconds because I recently released my ebook, An Introduction to Photographic Storytelling. Dozens of you have bought it already, and I cannot tell you how proud I am, how excited I am that you guys are enjoying it, and the feedback has been great. If you guys join my newsletter, you can get it for a discounted price. If not, it's available on my website at the link down below. Please check it out. I go into all kinds of subjects, including how to use ultra-wide lenses, how to build scenes, composition. Again, an introduction to photographic storytelling. It's exactly what it sounds like. There's this concept out there that the natural perspective lies somewhere around 35 to 45 millimeters, that matches our field of view most closely. And I have argued against this point before. I'll link a video above where I do exactly that. But to summarize, the field of view of the human eye is really much wider than those focal lengths actually depict. Our area of focus might be closer to that, but including our peripheral and everything we're experiencing in a scene, something between 12 and 15 millimeters is actually far closer. So an ultra wide, while being an unexpected perspective that can honestly feel a bit jarring, it's actually quite similar to our natural field of view. This means that if done correctly, we can create a sense of familiarity in people while still striking them with an unexpected composition. All I'm trying to say is that the idea that an ultra-wide is so atypical we should avoid it in, for instance, natural scene building, I think it's false. An ultra-wide really has its place amongst our natural perspectives, and I believe we should be using it more readily. With practice, we can do a very good job of pulling away all those distractions and creating clean frames, but it's going to take that practice. Now, I mentioned earlier that I would complete my review on this lens at the end of the video, so here we are. As mentioned earlier, this is a really compelling option for the price. I've typically had hesitation towards using cheaper lenses, but quite frankly, optics have gotten so good recently that even the cheaper lenses can be wildly compelling. And this one really is no different. The downsides to it far outweigh the cons, but I think the cons are very worth mentioning because they do dictate how you will use this lens. First, and I would say the largest con, is that the edges of this lens, when you've taken a frame, are quite soft. And so for something like landscape photography, that means I'm typically going to crop out those outer edges and come away with somewhere around 80 to 70% of the original frame, which is the sharpest portion, I would say. Now, this does at times defeat the purpose of an ultra-wide, and that's worth considering. 14 millimeters might look like 18 or 20 millimeters after a substantial crop, so keep that in mind. Do you have to do that crop? No, I don't believe you do, and I won't always. Oftentimes, the subject I need in focus is going to be near the center of the frame, and I'm honestly not very concerned if the outside of the frame is a little bit soft, but it's something worth considering. Now, I would have loved for this lens to be weather sealed. That is probably my only other big complaint, but really, it's just not stopped me from using. The aperture ring turns nicely, the focus is very good, very accurate. I have no problems with that. It comes with a little lens hood that you can screw filters onto, and while they're large, it's nice to have that option, especially in something so wide. While it's a little bit heavy, it's not so heavy that it means I'm not going to bring it. If I bring this instead of my 17 to 28, then I'm not worried about the weight. But if I'm bringing the two of them, that's a lot of glass to bring for a wide focal range. So, do I recommend this lens? Yes, absolutely. Is it going to perform like a 14 to 24 millimeter from Nikon that costs, $2,500? No, it's not. But is it going to fill that gap? Is it going to give you the option to shoot in an ultra-wide focal range without having to splash crazy cash? Yeah, it is. And it's going to do a pretty damn good job of it. So I think you guys should consider it. I think it's a great option, and I will have it in my bag for the rest of the year.